It's official. Apple is putting its own silicon in Macs starting later this year. Bye-bye, Intel.
Today is the day we're announcing that the Mac is transitioning to our own Apple silicon.
This is a long time coming. Apple's been designing fantastic chips for iPhones and iPads for years, dominating the high ends of the phone and tablet markets. But can it bring that successful formula to the Mac with its own silicon? Let's talk a little bit about what the transition to ARM actually means. AMD and Intel chips are based on the x86 instruction set architecture. These chips power a majority of desktops, laptops, and other performance-oriented devices out there today. That Ryzen in your gaming laptop and that Xeon in your server are both x86 chips. Apple's been using Intel processors since 2006-ish when it transitioned away from PowerPC. The ARM architecture, on the other hand, is dominant in mobile computing. It's simpler. The R in ARM stands for Reduced Instruction Set Computing. ARM chips are generally designed to be more power efficient and to have better thermals. You'll find them in phones, tablets, and some other personal computing devices like a couple of Microsoft Surfaces and the Raspberry Pi. Think of it this way. Intel chips compromise on efficiency for the sake of power and complexity. ARM chips do the inverse. That's why they have their natural homes in desktops and phones, respectively. Laptops and desktops aren't the same as phones and tablets, obviously. We use them differently and we expect them to run different programs. Ditching the x86 architecture for ARM is no mean feat. ARM is a different instruction set and it's going to require software developers to recompile their code to be compatible with future versions of macOS. Legacy applications that aren't updated won't run natively on ARM devices. You'll need an emulation layer. Apple's translation software is called Rosetta 2, which it insists won't come with too much of a performance hit, but we'll see how that shakes out in practice. Some developers have made the switch. Apple's full steam ahead on this, obviously, so you'll be able to run Final Cut Pro just fine on the new Macs. Microsoft and Adobe are also on board as well, or will be soon, but what about other developers? Are Macs, which are a tiny portion of the market, going to attract the development support needed to ensure they're useful for all their customers? I guess you could say Apple's message to developers is, when training your programming muscles, don't skip ARM day.
Are you seriously going to say that?
What? Get it? Because, like, the instruction set architecture?
I mean, okay.
Fine. We'll cut it out. We'll cut it in post. I think this Reddit comment summed things up perfectly well. The commenter is both excited and a little trepidatious. Next, I want to talk about the pain this developer is predicting. Matter of fact, let's do some pros and cons, and then we'll talk about the implications of Apple's big announcement. Alright, the pros. First, Apple already owns hardware design in the operating system. With macOS Big Sur, the first ARM-compatible macOS, Apple is promising powerful integration. Whether it's a secure enclave, a neural engine, or high-performance cores, the top-to-bottom approach comes with something for everyone. If you find yourself in Apple's walled garden most of the time, this transition is going to be great. Next, in its chips, Apple has historically emphasized power efficiency. The low-power ARM architecture could offer some pretty significant gains in battery life for its mobile devices and power efficiency for its desktops. That's not insignificant. You may yet be able to get all-day battery life out of your new ARM MacBook Pro. Finally, iPad and iPhone apps are written for ARM chips, so they'll run natively on macOS. That'll bring a whole lot to the Mac, and while other implementations of phone apps on non-phone hardware like Android apps on Chrome OS have been, well, a mixed bag, Apple, of all companies, is well positioned to get this right. I hope they do. It'll be interesting to see how they'll handle the lack of a touchscreen, though. On to the cons, or should I say, risks. Get it? You know, because of the instruction set?
Are you serious?
Fine, we'll cut that too. Cons. For one, there's going to be that transition period developers have to update their software to support the new architecture. For a while, they'll have to maintain support for x86 as well. Apple has committed to supporting Intel Macs for years to come, and their record on long-term support has been good. But that extra effort will cost somebody, somewhere, something. So that should be considered. There's also the possibility that some developers just won't bother to make the leap. This is especially likely for older applications. Macs don't have enough market share to guarantee that everyone will get on board. Finally, if you're a member of the Hackintosh community, or like to dual boot Windows using Boot Camp, you're probably out of luck. Gaming is also going to be a challenge, though you'll be happy to know that the iPad version of Angry Birds will run natively. So, that's good. Oh, and one more thing. Let's talk about the general uncertainty. Should you drop 50 grand on a new Mac? Or should you wait for a transition? What software will be supported? Will the ARM version of Photoshop be as good as an x86 version? What will the performance delta actually look like? Apple hasn't released any numbers that I've seen, so that's all up in the air. I think you get the idea. There's good and there's bad, but what does it all mean for you? Well, That depends on who you are. Let's talk implications. When faced with a similar transition, Apple handled it well. The switch from PowerPC to Intel almost 15 years ago went off smoothly, so we know it can be done. For consumers, I'm going to go ahead and predict a positive outcome. If everything goes as planned, you'll get a powerful yet efficient computer that just works. But you'll likely face some lock-in. Remember I mentioned all those Apple-specific things that OS hardware integration was going to bring to the Mac? Apple is really making an ecosystem play here. To take full advantage of everything they're offering, you're going to find yourself troweling inside of a walled garden. Compatibility obviously isn't a priority, so if you're cool with Mac apps that are only Mac apps and can properly exploit the machine learning accelerators and neural nets and whatnot, I say more power to you. For enterprise users, it could get a little more complicated. Those apps that focus on the Apple ecosystem exclusively will probably be fine. All of you Jamf users can breathe a sigh of relief. But there will almost certainly be some growing pains as everyone rushes to get their software ducks in a software row. It may be wise to liaise with your vendors now, especially for your more obscure software. And don't expect all your enterprise-grade stuff to work right away. There's going to be a little bit of a lead time. I think the most interesting implication for enterprise IT is what this means for the cloud. I see this transition accelerating software vendors' cloud ambitions. Instead of building out dedicated ARM apps, a shift to a cloud-based service model would eliminate the performance headaches and the need for emulation. Vendors wouldn't have to put all thick clients out. Some apps will never go this direction. It's hard to imagine a web version of Photoshop or whatever, but as we abstract away endpoints and look at devices as windows into the wider world of computing, I can see software vendors taking this approach. Google already managed a version of this with Chromebooks. macOS Big Sur isn't the same as Chrome OS, whatever number we're on now, but in a weird way I can see them serving a sort of similar purpose. I can't tell you exactly how this will look in the future. It may be simple, it may be complicated, but as with all things Apple, it'll be interesting. Hey, thank you so much for watching yet another video. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's always fun talking about instruction set architectures. If you liked it, please like the video, share it if you want, follow me on LinkedIn, and as always, I appreciate you watching. Thanks. Goodbye.
Don't do the K-bye. Do it again.